One of the great taboos in our culture is that of death. We don't really like to talk about it, so we use other kinds of words and phrases. We don't really like to think about it in case it makes us upset. In fact, maybe right now you've tuned into this video hoping to hear something light and you hear someone talking about death and you think, far too intense. I don't want to hear about death. Death is one of the great taboos in our culture, and yet the reality is that each one of us faces a future of death. The Bible speaks directly about death. And in the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 11:4, the proverb speaks about two kinds of people who die. In fact, what it says is that when we die, there are only two kinds of people. The first is a person who, the proverb says, lives in pursuit of stuff. It could be money, it could be cars, it could be houses, it could be jobs, it could be status. Whatever it is, this person lives trying to acquire and receive all kinds of things. Just stuff. It's what the proverb calls riches. And what it says is that for that person, when they die, none of their riches can profit them on the day of wrath. In other words, when they die, nothing they've acquired, nothing that they have done can help them or save them beyond the grave. That's the first kind of person. The second person the proverb speaks of is the righteous person. It's someone who might have lots of stuff or no stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's not the stuff that's a problem. It's what they live their lives pursuing. And what the righteous person lives their life pursuing is righteousness. It's doing what is good and right before God in the things they say, in what they do, in how they think. In all that they are and do, they are righteous. They do what is right before God. And what the proverb says is that for that person, when they die, their righteousness, it says, delivers them from death. For that person will be saved beyond the grave. There are two kinds of people in this proverb. And I reckon most of us would probably like to see ourselves as righteous. We might think of ourselves as people who do what is good and right before God. And certainly when we think of ourselves as dying, we hope that God would see us as righteous, that we may be saved beyond the grave. And yet the reality is that none of us is righteous before God. Because who of us can say that in all that we say and all that we do and all that we think, we always do what is right before God? In fact, the Bible says that none of us do. Instead, we live our lives trying to get, trying to acquire, trying to receive as much as we can, just trying to get lots of stuff. Which means that in the end, when we die, there is no hope. Nothing can save us beyond the grave. And yet the Bible speaks of one man, Jesus Christ, who although rich became poor. Not because riches are bad, but because he lived his life pursuing righteousness. That in all he said and all he did and all he thought, he did what was right before God. So that for all those who turn to Jesus and trust in Jesus, by his death, he removes all our unrighteousness. And by his resurrection, not only does he overcome death itself, but by his resurrection, he makes us and declares us righteous, that we may live a righteous life and know that in all of life, he will deliver us from the grave. Death is a great taboo in our culture, but it doesn't need to be. Because the Bible tells us that when we turn to Jesus and trust in him, his righteousness becomes our righteousness, that we may live for him righteously and know that he will deliver us from the grave.